The early morning light, soft and buttery, spilled through the bedroom window, landing just so on the worn wooden floorboards. I stirred, blinking away the last vestiges of sleep. Elias was still deep in slumber beside me, his breathing shallow, a soft, almost imperceptible whistle on the exhale. He looked so vulnerable then, so much like a scholar lost in his own fragile world. A wave of purpose, warm and gentle, washed over me. This was it, my second chance, my quiet new life. I slipped out of bed, careful not to disturb him. My bare feet met the cool wood. Funny, I hadn't remembered the floor being quite so cold, even in summer. But then, I often forgot little things these days. A side effect of the change, I supposed. The new air, the new peace. Downstairs, the kitchen hummed with a different kind of morning quiet. I moved instinctively, lighting the stove for the kettle, grabbing the skillet. I had a feeling for what Elias liked. Simple things: eggs, toast, maybe some jam. I opened the large wooden refrigerator, the cool air inside a small comfort. My eyes scanned the shelves, then landed on a jar of strawberry jam. It was a deep, rich red, glistening. I paused. Strawberry jam? I was sure I had bought apricot last week. Or had I? My memory, it was patchy sometimes. But the jar felt right somehow, familiar. A strange thought, like it had always been there. A little sigh of relief escaped me. What a silly thing to worry about. Maybe Elias had picked it up. Yes, that must be it. He was always so thoughtful, even in his fragile state. I started to hum a tune as I spread the jam generously on a slice of toast. From upstairs, I heard a faint cough. Elias, my Elias. I smiled, then quickly plated his breakfast, rushing it up to him. He was propped up against the pillows, his eyes still a little hazy with sleep. "Good morning, my dear," he murmured, his voice a whisper. "You're an angel." I sat on the edge of the bed, reaching out to offer him the plate. Our fingers brushed. His hand, it felt strange. A sudden, sharp chill ran through me, despite the warmth of the room. It was like touching something made of ice, but fleeting, gone in an instant. I looked up at him, my brow furrowed. His eyes, for a split second, seemed distant, like he wasn't really seeing me, just looking through me. A strange, hollow space there. Then, just as quickly, the warmth returned to his gaze. He reached for my hand, his grip firm. "Are you all right, my love?" he asked, his voice full of concern. "You look as though you've seen a ghost." I pulled my hand back, a little too quickly. "No, no," I stammered, shaking my head. "Just a little tired. I think I'll get some water." I practically fled the room, heading downstairs. My heart was beating a bit too fast. I tried to calm myself, taking deep, shuddering breaths as I filled a glass at the sink. "It's nothing, Sarah, just nerves. Everything is new. Everything is different." I looked out the kitchen window, at the garden that stretched out behind the house. It was full of life, too full, perhaps. Every leaf, every flower seemed to pulse with an almost unnatural vibrancy, a riot of green and color that felt like it was breathing. A strange thought. I shook my head again. Later, I was in the small study, trying to make sense of Elias's vast collection of books. They were old, many of them, with dark leather bindings and faint, forgotten scents. I pulled out a familiar novel, one I had read a dozen times, or so I thought. The cover felt right in my hands.
The weight. I placed it back on the shelf, right next to Elias's large, leather-bound journal. That's when I saw it. A small, dark red spot on the spine of the novel. It looked like a dried drop of ink, maybe. Or something else. It was a perfect circle. And I knew, truly knew, it hadn't been there yesterday. I ran my thumb over it. Dry, rough. I tried to rub it off, but it clung to the leather. I frowned, then shrugged. An old house, old books. These things happen. Maybe Elias had cut himself. Yes, that made sense. I decided to make myself some tea, a soothing cup, just to settle my nerves. I walked into the kitchen, the kettle whistling softly on the stove. I poured the hot water into my favorite mug, then carried it to the small wooden table by the window. The morning sun was still bright outside. I set the mug down, but as I did, I felt a distinct dampness on my palm. My eyes darted to the spot where the mug had just rested.
A small, glistening puddle of water sat there, right on the polished wood. But how? The mug was dry on the outside, and I hadn't spilled a drop. There was no source, no dripping from above, no open windows. I touched it again, cool, slick. It vanished almost immediately, absorbed by the wood. I stared at the spot, my mind trying to piece it together. I had cleaned this table thoroughly last night. I always did. It was completely dry. I looked around, almost expecting to find some logical reason, but there was none, nothing, just an inexplicable wet spot. Well, maybe I had imagined it, or maybe, just maybe, I really was more tired than I thought. A little later, I stood in our bedroom, brushing my hair. The mirror, an antique piece with an ornate silver frame, reflected my face back at me. My eyes met my own. I blinked. The reflection blinked back. But there was a fraction of a second, a tiny, almost imperceptible delay, as if the image in the glass took a moment longer to catch up. I blinked again, quickly, and this time my reflection didn't blink. It simply stared. Its eyes were dark, almost depthless, and for that brief, terrifying moment, utterly devoid of life. Then it blinked, perfectly in sync with me. My breath hitched. I dropped the brush. It clattered to the floor with a sound that seemed deafeningly loud. At that exact moment, Elias walked into the room, a gentle smile playing on his lips. "What's wrong, my dear?" he asked, his voice soft. "Did you see something peculiar?" He bent down, picking up the brush for me. The mirror," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "My reflection, it wasn't." Elias chuckled, a warm, reassuring sound. He put his arm around me. "Oh, Sarah," he said, gently kissing my forehead. "You've been working too hard. Your eyes are playing tricks on you. There's nothing amiss here. Now, why don't you rest a bit?" He led me to the bed, and I sat down, still shaken. Elias settled beside me, opening one of his heavy books, beginning to read. He coughed, a dry, raspy sound I had grown accustomed to. It was part of him now, a constant reminder of his delicate health. But then, just a moment later, I heard it again, a faint cough. It was weaker, softer, so weak, in fact, it sounded like it was coming from my pillow. A whisper of a cough, like an echo from far away, right beneath my ear. I spun around, my heart hammering against my ribs. Nothing, just the soft floral pattern of the pillowcase. I looked at Elias. He hadn't seemed to notice. He just kept reading. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my voice thin. He looked up, a slight frown on his face. "Hear what, my love?" he asked, confused. "My cough?" "No," I insisted, my eyes wide. "Another one, from the pillow."
Elias smiled, shaking his head. "Oh, Sarah," he said, his voice laced with gentle amusement. "You're imagining things again. Living out here in the quiet, it plays tricks on the mind." He reached over, patting my arm. I touched the pillow, feeling the soft fabric. It was cool, as expected. But then, there it was again. A faint, almost imperceptible warmth, radiating from the spot where I had heard the sound. And a smell. A faint, ethereal scent of pollen. It was not the scent of our room, not anything I recognized. It was different, alien. A cold certainty began to bloom in my chest. Something was off. Deeply, fundamentally off. To calm my rapidly fraying nerves, I decided on another cup of tea, chamomile this time. I walked back to the kitchen, my movements stiff, almost robotic. I reached for my favorite teacup, the one with a tiny hummingbird painted delicately at the bottom of the inside. I liked to watch it appear as I drank, a small moment of joy. I held the warm cup in my hands, closing my eyes, willing myself to believe that everything was fine. Just fine. I opened my eyes. The cup was still there. The hummingbird, too. But its head. It had turned. Just a fraction. It was facing the other way. Not towards the handle, as it always did, but towards me. As if it had just looked at me. My hand started to tremble. I placed the cup down with a clatter, not caring if it broke. This was too much. This was absolutely, undeniably too much. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers clumsy. I needed proof. I needed proof. I pulled up the camera app, pointing it at the cup, but the screen was dark, pitch black. I tapped it again. Nothing. The app refused to work. Desperation surged through me. I wanted to scream.
Finally, I gave up, dropping the phone on the counter. And when I looked back at the cup, the hummingbird's head was back in its original position, facing the handle. Elias had finally drifted off to sleep, the house settling into a deeper quiet. I sat in the living room, curled up on the sofa, trying to compose myself. The odd occurrences of the day had left me raw, frayed. But Elias was asleep now, and the familiar view from the large window, the rolling hills, the distant trees, the quaint farmhouses dotting the landscape, it all seemed to lull me into a fragile sense of peace. Just look at the peace. It's all going to be fine. I let out a long, slow breath, a shaky sigh of relief. Then, abruptly, the light in the room halved. One moment it was glowing softly from the antique chandelier overhead. The next it was dimmer, plunged into a murky twilight. I looked up. One of the bulbs in the chandelier, a frosted, elegant globe, was dark, shattered. But I hadn't heard a sound. No crash, no pop, nothing. Just darkness. I stood up, a prickle of unease running down my spine. I walked to the chandelier, reaching up to touch the other bulbs, the ones still glowing. They were cold, ice cold, despite being on. This was wrong. This was just wrong. I needed more light. I reached for the switch on a small table lamp nearby. Click. It should have come on. But instead, the large floor lamp in the corner, which had been casting a soft glow, suddenly went out, leaving the room even darker. My hands started to shake. I stared at the floor lamp, then at the table lamp. I flicked the table lamp switch off. The floor lamp stayed dark. I flicked the floor lamp switch on. The table lamp immediately went out. It was a macabre dance of light and shadow, one refusing to exist with the other. Every time I tried to bring light back into the room, another source died. It felt like the very concept of illumination in this house was being
contested, vied for, and it was losing. I took a step back, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. The house was trying to keep me in the dark, literally. I sank onto the floor, pulling my knees to my chest, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The dim light seemed to press in on me, creating monstrous shadows from familiar furniture. I couldn't explain any of it. My mind raced, trying to find a logical thread, a reason for any of this, but there was none. I was just scared. A deep, cold fear that settled in my bones. All these little things, all these undeniable proofs that my mind was not playing tricks. My gaze drifted to the old wallpapered wall in front of me. The pale yellow paper was peeling in one spot, a small, ragged tear near the floor. Beneath the peeling paper, etched into the plaster, as if with a frantic fingernail, was a message. My eyes struggled to make out the faded words in the failing light, but they were there. Clear, stark. Don't trust him. Don't love him. No one gets out. My voice, when it came, was a choked, trembling whisper. The faint message on the wallpaper, "Don't trust him, don't love him, no one gets out," had clung to my mind like a burr all night. I had spent hours staring at it, my heart doing that frantic little flutter against my ribs. But by morning, the rational part of my brain, the one that desperately wanted this new life to be real, had taken over. It was paint, peeling paint. Maybe someone had scratched something in there, years ago, a child perhaps. Children were always so dramatic. I told myself that, over and over, until I almost believed it. I woke feeling a little lighter, though the exhaustion still hummed beneath my skin like a persistent static. Elias was already stirring, a soft cough rattling in his chest. A little weaker than yesterday, I thought. See, everything was still normal-ish. I tried to focus on that normalcy. Maybe I really was just tired. The fresh air, the change, it was a lot to take in. I went about cleaning the living room, dusting the mantelpiece, straightening a few books. My hands moved stiffly. I reached for the old family photo there, the one with Elias standing so tall, a gentle smile on his face. Beside him, a woman. She was smiling too, a soft, almost ethereal smile. I picked up the frame, running my thumb over the glass. Her dress. It was blue, a deep, rich sapphire. I stopped. My hand froze. I stared at the photo, then at my memory of it. I remembered it being green, a dark forest green.
I was sure of it. I had admired the color just last week, thinking how well it suited her, whoever she was. But it was blue now, undeniably blue. "No," I whispered, almost to myself. "No, it was green." I shook my head, my grip tightening on the frame. My eyes scanned the details, looking for any sign of a trick, some painted-over alteration. Nothing. It looked entirely natural. Always blue. My mind felt like it was trying to wrestle itself apart, two conflicting realities battling for space. Green, blue. I squeezed my eyes shut, then opened them. Still blue. Shit, what was happening to me? My head throbbed. I placed the photo back down, very, very gently, as if a sudden movement might shatter it, or me. I backed away, my eyes still fixed on that sapphire dress. My heart hammered, a frantic drum against my ribs. Just a trick of the light, I told myself.
Or maybe Elias had another photo, a similar one, and I was mixing them up. Yes, that must be it. It had to be. Otherwise, I was truly losing it. Later, I decided to go to the garden, get some air, distract myself. The sun was warm, but not oppressive. I walked down the path, the scent of damp earth and late-blooming flowers filling my lungs. The garden was truly astonishing. Every plant seemed to burst with life, the leaves a vibrant, almost aggressive green, the flowers impossibly bright. It was late in the season, too late for such exuberance. I knew that, but I tried not to think about it too much. I stopped at a rose bush. It was laden with blooms, their petals of velvet crimson, unfurling in defiance of the cooling air. They felt too perfect, too full of life. I reached out a hesitant finger, touching one of the soft, velvety petals. And that's when it hit me. A chill. Not just a coolness from the plant, but something more. It wasn't just cold, it was draining, like the rose was actively sucking the heat, the very warmth from my skin. My finger, my hand, they felt suddenly hollow, empty. An unnatural, aching cold that went deeper than just the surface. I snatched my hand back, a gasp catching in my throat. I stared at my fingers, flexing them, trying to bring back the feeling, the warmth. It felt dead. For a moment. Just a moment. And then, slowly, the blood rushed back, the sensation returning. But it still felt alien. Just then, Elias's voice drifted from the open kitchen window. "Sarah, what's wrong, my dear? The garden is beautiful today." I turned, my eyes wide. He sounded stronger, more vibrant, not the soft, hushed tone I had grown accustomed to. There was a richness, almost a booming quality to his voice. I looked down at my hand again, still feeling that residual chill, that strange exhaustion. And I looked at the rose bush, its petals still impossibly perfect, impossibly vibrant. My breath hitched. It was like the garden, like Elias himself, was feeding off of me, literally. Taking something I couldn't articulate, but I could feel it leaving. I felt a surge of nausea. This was too much. I needed to write this down, to make sense of it, to prove to myself that I wasn't insane. I retreated inside, my steps quicker than before. I found my small notebook, the one with the plain brown cover, and a pencil. My hand trembled as I uncapped it. I sat at the kitchen table, the one that had been mysteriously wet yesterday, and opened the notebook to a fresh page. I pressed the tip of the pencil to the paper. The green dress in the photo, I started to write, my hand firm, my intention clear. I wanted to record it. The green, the indisputable green. But as I wrote the word green, something felt wrong. The pencil felt heavy, resistant, almost like it had a will of its own. It seemed to drag against my grasp, my fingers suddenly clumsy, unresponsive. My hand, despite my conscious effort, slipped. Not just a normal slip, it was a violent jerk. And when it landed back on the paper, it didn't continue my sentence. Oh God, it wrote something else entirely. A single, stark line. Not green. I stared. My hand, my own hand, had written that. Not me. Not my intention. I tried to make sense of the letters, the slant of the handwriting. It was mine. But the thought, the command, it wasn't. It felt alien, imposed, like a thought being forced into my mind, or an action taken by a puppet of my own body. My stomach churned. It felt like I was losing control of the most basic parts of myself, my mind, my memory, my very hand.
Panic, cold and sharp, coiled in my gut. I threw the notebook across the room. It clattered against the wall, falling to the floor with a pathetic thud. "No," I whispered, my voice cracked and dry. "No, it was green. It was green." But even as I said it, the word felt distant, like a phantom limb of a memory, something I couldn't quite grasp anymore. The blue dress, the sapphire blue, it was pushing the green out, replacing it. I could feel it happening, a complete rewriting of my own internal world. I needed air. I needed to get out. My feet moved on their own, a raw animal instinct gripping me. I ran, blindly, towards the stairs, desperate to get out of the kitchen, out of this suffocating room. But my foot caught on something. Nothing was there, but I stumbled. I pitched forward, my hand scraping against the rough wood of the banister. I looked up, my eyes wide and stinging, breathing hard. And there it was, on the wall beside the staircase, a damp stain, one I had noticed yesterday. Just a faint, splotchy mark. But now it wasn't just a stain. It was morphing. The shapes and shadows shifted, oozing, taking on a terrible semblance. Two dark, gaping circles formed. Eyes. A long, twisted smudge beneath them, a mouth pulled open, like a silent scream contorted in agony. It was a face, horrible, utterly, terrifyingly human. My breath caught in my chest. I stared, riveted, my body paralyzed. It stared back, those black, hollow eyes fixed on me. It felt like the wall itself was alive, watching me, judging me. My blood ran cold. Was the house doing this? Was it trying to tell me something? Or was it just hungry? I tore my gaze away, forcing my head to turn. No, I was imagining it. I had to be. Too much had happened today. My mind was playing tricks. I looked back, a fresh wave of sick dread washing over me. And just as quickly as it had appeared, the face was gone, receded. It was just a damp stain again, splotchy, harmless. But I knew what I had seen. My hand started to rise, hesitantly, towards the spot. I wanted to touch it, to feel if it was real, if it was wet. But before my fingers could make contact, a chilling gust of air, a sudden, almost malicious cold, swept past my hand. It was an invisible push, a clear, unmistakable warning. Don't. My hand dropped, trembling. The house was alive, and it was warning me. I had to get out. I just had to. I couldn't stay here anymore. My mind was shattering into tiny pieces. I decided. I would go to town, find someone, anyone. I pushed past the lingering chill, the ghost of that face on the wall, and I stumbled towards the front door. I walked. How long, I don't know. Minutes, hours. The sun was high. Then it began to dip, casting long, strange shadows across the dirt road. The exhaustion in my bones felt deeper than mere physical tiredness. It was like I was walking through molasses. But I kept going. Finally, in the distance, I saw it. The small town. A handful of old wooden houses, a general store, a church steeple. Quaint, peaceful. It was real. I could see it. Thank God.
My legs ached, my throat was dry, but relief, a desperate, fragile thing, began to bloom in my chest. I could make it. I truly could. I saw a woman, an elderly woman, with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, sitting on a rocking chair on her porch. She was knitting, her needles clicking softly in the quiet afternoon air, a picture of serenity. I practically ran towards her, my voice hoarse. "Ma'am, please, I need help. Something's wrong. At Elias's farm. The house. My memories." The words spilled out, rushed and garbled, a frantic torrent of fear and confusion. I told her about the dress, the roses, the notebook, the face on the wall, the message, everything. She listened, patiently. Her kind eyes, crinkled at the corners, never left my face. She just nodded, a small, gentle smile playing on her lips. When I finished, breathless, she didn't say anything for a long moment, just continued knitting, the needles a soft, rhythmic clack. Then she finally spoke. Her voice was soft, laced with a strange, almost pitying tenderness. "Oh, my dear," she murmured, her gaze still fixed on her rapidly growing knitting. "You've been here a long time now. It's time for you to go back." My blood ran cold. "Go back?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. A chilling sense of dread began to spread from my feet upwards. "Go back where?" She didn't look at me. She just kept knitting.
The smile remained on her face, but it felt empty, detached. Her voice, a low, almost sing-song whisper, drifted like the breeze. "To Elias, my dear. To your room. To the loop." The words struck me like a physical blow. The loop. My mind reeled. An invisible cord seemed to tighten around my chest, suffocating me. I felt the very air being sucked from my lungs. My eyes frantically scanned the small, quiet town, the peaceful houses. They all seemed to blur, to waver at the edges. I spun around, looking back at the long, dusty road I had just walked. But it wasn't there, not really. Just the endless, winding stretch of countryside. How had I even gotten here? I couldn't remember. The path back to Elias's farm, it wasn't just long, it felt infinite, impossible. Like it had always been there, stretching into a hazy, indistinguishable past. My heart began to pound a sickening rhythm. No one gets out. I felt a sudden jolt, a flash of something. Elias, napping, that afternoon. I had rushed to the kitchen, leaving him upstairs. And when I passed the living room, I heard it again, a low, mournful moan, from underneath the floorboards. I had bent down, my ear pressed against the cool wood, but found nothing, just the silence of the old house. I thought it was just the house settling. I had to. But now... No, Elias was too quiet, too still. I needed to see him, to make sure he was okay. I went back to the house, my legs moving without my conscious command. My mind was like a broken record, the old woman's words echoing, repeating, intertwining with the message on the wallpaper. To the loop. That evening, a false twilight settled over the house. Elias was in the library, as usual, immersed in his heavy, leather-bound tomes. I sat opposite him, trying to read my own book, but the words swam before my eyes. My gaze kept drifting to him. He looked better, less frail. His skin had a healthier flush. His eyes seemed brighter.
It was a stark visual contrast to the growing fatigue, the deep, heavy exhaustion that was now a constant companion for me. My eyes wandered over the dusty shelves, moving past the familiar titles. And there, tucked away between two thick volumes, I saw it. A small, worn leather journal. Its cover was dark, almost black, scarred with age. It looked out of place, slightly different from the ordered rows of Elias's books. A morbid curiosity seized me. I reached for it, my fingers tracing the faded gold tooling on the spine. It felt heavy in my hands. I opened it. The pages were yellowed, brittle, filled with elegant but shaky handwriting. The script was dense, almost frantic in places. I started to read. It was a woman's journal. Her name was Abigail, and she wrote in agonizing detail about her life here, about her husband, an invalid scholar named Elias. She wrote about the strange occurrences in the house, the way familiar objects would shift, the moments of confusion, the feeling of her own memories becoming fragmented, distant. She wrote about the garden, flourishing with an unholy vigor. She wrote about her growing exhaustion, her weakness, the constant draining feeling. She wrote about Elias, how he seemed to gain strength as she faded. My breath hitched, my vision blurred. Every single detail, every single one, it was all there. Hers was my story, my life, my terrifying, inescapable new reality. The blood drained from my face. I looked up, my eyes wide with unspeakable horror, and met Elias's gaze. He was still sitting in his armchair. He had been quietly reading his own book, but now he was looking at me. A faint, gentle smile played on his lips. His eyes, though, were far too bright in the dim light. They seemed to hold an ancient, knowing glint. "A good story, isn't it, my dear?" he said. Abigail was quite the storyteller. The journal dropped from my numb fingers, hitting the polished floorboards with a sickening thud. The sound seemed to crack open something inside me. Elias knew. He knew all of it. He had known all along. And his smile, it wasn't gentle. It was a predator's smile. I screamed, though no sound came out. No, that wasn't right. A scream was in my throat, but it was trapped. My legs somehow found the strength to move. I scrambled to my feet, my chair scraping harshly against the floor. I ran, not towards Elias, not towards the journal, but towards the front door. I had to get out. I had to break free.
I flung myself at the heavy wooden door, grabbing the cold brass knob. I twisted. It didn't budge. I pulled with all my might. It was locked. More than locked. It felt like it was fused shut, a solid, immovable barrier. I slammed my fist against the wood, a pathetic, desperate thump. And then I smelled it. A foul odor, a pungent, sickening stench began to seep from beneath the door. It was the smell of damp earth, yes, but more. The cloying sweetness of decay, of something ancient and rotten, something utterly dead, yet horribly, sickeningly alive. It oozed, a thick, invisible miasma, coating my tongue, filling my lungs. It pulled at me. It wanted to pull me back inside. I stumbled back, gagging, fresh tears stinging my eyes. The door, it wasn't just locked.
It was guarded by whatever was out there, whatever was feeding. There was nowhere to go, no escape. My legs gave out. I crawled, whimpering, away from that door, away from that smell, away from Elias's terrifying, knowing smile. My breath came in ragged, desperate gasps. I just kept crawling until I reached the bedroom. I flung myself into the room, collapsing onto the bed, shivering uncontrollably. My eyes darted around, searching for something, anything to give me comfort, to anchor me to a reality that felt like it was slipping through my fingers like sand. My gaze landed on the small wooden box on my dressing table, a box I had brought with me. It contained a few treasured mementos from my old life, my real life. My fingers fumbled with the clasp, my hand still shaking violently. I opened the box. Inside, nestled among a few other trinkets, was a small, creased photograph. It was a picture of me and my mother, my beautiful mother, her arm around my shoulders, her eyes sparkling with warmth, her smile so wide and genuine. A lifeline, a memory, my truth. "Mom," I whispered, tears finally streaming down my face. "Mom." I reached for the photo. My fingers brushed the smooth, cool surface of the paper. And as soon as I touched it, as if my contact had triggered something horrific, the image shifted. It didn't blur. It didn't fade. It changed, immediately, visibly. The kind, loving face of my mother, the one I had cherished, the one I remembered so clearly, began to distort. Her features elongated, her eyes grew puffy and red-rimmed, full of a terrible, unspeakable pain. Her cherished smile twisted into a grimace of pure agony. The warmth, the life, drained from her eyes, replaced by a haunting, vacant stare. The hair, once soft and familiar, became exactly like mine. My mother's face became the face of a stranger who looked exactly like me, except for the pain, the unspeakable pain. It was one of them, one of the other wives, the ones I had seen in glimpses, in fleeting reflections. Her face, trapped in that photograph, screaming silently. My mother's face was gone, replaced. My breath hitched, a strangled sound of utter despair. I stared at the photo, my own trembling hands holding the evidence of my undoing, my past, my identity, my very self. It wasn't just eroded, it was being overwritten, erased. I was becoming her, one of them, another version, another victim. My life, my memories were being devoured, replaced by the collective agony of every woman who had been here before. I was the next layer, the next Sarah. And the face staring back at me from the photograph, my mother's face replaced by her suffering, was a terrifying prophecy. My future. No, my end. I dropped the photograph. It landed silently on the duvet. My body went numb. My mind was empty. Only one thought remained, a cold, hard stone in my chest. I was going to be lost. My heart had stopped its frantic pounding. There was just a slow, sickening throb. From the window, a pale, haunting moonlight streamed into the room. I lifted my head, my eyes drawn to the garden below. Elias was standing there, in the center of the lawn, not inside, outside, under the moonlight. He stood tall, straight, not frail at all. His head was tilted back, his face lifted towards the night sky. The moonlight bathed him, illuminating his features. He was no longer the sickly, gentle scholar I had come to care for. His skin glowed with an unnatural vibrancy. His eyes, though I couldn't see them clearly from this distance, felt open, alert, and on his lips a slow, terrible smirk, almost a smile. But it was not a human smile. It was one of pride, of a job well done, of ownership.
And around him, the garden, the impossibly verdant plants, the wildly blooming roses, they seemed to stir, to reach. Like invisible tentacles, they stretched out, embracing him, intertwining around him. They pulsed, they seemed to whisper, a low, rustling sound that I couldn't quite make out. But then the whisper sharpened. It entered my mind, not through my ears, but directly, into the deepest, most terrified corners of my consciousness. It was a voice, dry, ancient, and chillingly familiar. But it wasn't Elias's voice. It wasn't the old woman's voice. It was my own voice, twisted, corrupted, yet undeniably mine. It echoed in my head, soft and insidious, clear, stark. Welcome home, Sarah. The new cycle begins. The voice in my head, my own voice, had chilled me to the bone. Welcome home, Sarah. The new cycle begins. It echoed, bounced around inside my skull, making my teeth ache. I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand being home. This wasn't home. It was a prison. I scrambled off the bed, my legs wobbly, still feeling that numb cold in my stomach from the photograph. I had to get out. That was the only thought. Get out. I ran, not towards Elias, who I knew was still out there, under the moonlight, absorbing whatever he absorbed. I ran towards the front door. Again. My hand found the brass knob. It was cold, so cold it burned. I twisted it, hard, nothing. The door didn't even rattle. No click, no creak, just solid. Like it had always been part of the frame, never meant to open. I pulled, I pushed, I slammed my shoulder against it. It didn't budge, not an inch. It was stone, I swear, stone fused into the wall. My shoulder screamed, a dull ache spreading through my arm. No, it wasn't just locked, it was sealed, trapped. I was trapped. Panic clawed at my chest. I backed away, my eyes still fixed on the door, as if staring at it hard enough would make it give way. It wouldn't. I knew it wouldn't. Not this time. I needed another way. There had to be another way. A window. I remembered that broken window upstairs, the one I had thought Elias needed to fix. Maybe it was still broken. Maybe I could squeeze through. It was a stupid, desperate idea, but it was all I had. I ran through the house. The hallways seemed wrong, longer than I remembered. Or maybe I was just running slower, my legs heavy, dragging against the floor. I didn't know. I didn't care.
Up the stairs, 2 at a time, my lungs burning, the air like sand in my throat. I burst into the upstairs hallway. The late-night light from the windows outside, a dim, sickly yellow glow, painted the walls with long, distorted shadows. I went to the window, the one I remembered. The glass was clean. The frame was tight. It was perfect. No crack, no loose pane. It was sealed shut, just like the front door. Every single window up here, I tried them all, frantically. They were all the same, solid, unyielding. It was like the house itself was closing around me, tightening its grip. I sank to the floor, my breath coming in ragged gasps. My head spun. There was nowhere to go. I leaned against the cold wall, trying to breathe, trying to think. My hand went to my face, smearing away the tears I hadn't even realized I was crying. And that's when I noticed it. My hand. It was covered in a thin layer of dust. Not just a little bit, but enough to make my fingers feel rough, griffy. I looked down at my dress. The hem was dusted too. And my shoes. How? I had cleaned earlier. I remembered a vague feeling of waking up, of washing myself. I was clean. I was sure of it. But this dust, it was everywhere. On my clothes, on my skin. It felt like the house was literally dissolving around me, falling apart, and I was breathing it in, coating me in its decay. My skin crawled. A soft cough. I froze. My eyes darted up, sweeping the empty hallway. No one, just the long shadows. My heart hammered against my ribs, a wild drum. It had come from behind me, a little too close. I slowly turned, my muscles screaming in protest, my neck stiff. And there he was, Elias. He was standing in the doorway, framed against the faint light from the stairs. He didn't look sick, not anymore. He looked vibrant. His skin had a deep, healthy glow, like he'd spent a summer under the sun. His eyes, usually clouded, were bright. Too bright. They glittered, like polished stones, catching every sliver of light. And his smile, oh God, his smile, it was wide, too wide.
It stretched his mouth, pulling the corners back almost to his ears. It didn't look human. It looked like a cut, a terrible, unnatural cut on his face. He took a step towards me. His steps were firm, confident, not the shuffling gait of an invalid. He wasn't weak at all. He hadn't been weak, not really. It was all a lie. "Sarah," he said. His voice, too, had changed. It was deep, resonating, not the soft, hushed tone of a scholar. There was a richness to it, a terrible, full sound that settled in my bones. I tried to scramble away, to get up, but my body felt like lead. My legs wouldn't move. I was paralyzed, just watching his terrifying, wide smile. He knelt down, his eyes fixed on mine. They were full of something. Affection? Pity? Ownership? I didn't know. I didn't want to know. He reached out a hand, gently. His fingers brushed my cheek. And the cold, the inexplicable cold I had felt before, from the rose, from him, it wasn't vague anymore. It was a physical thing, like claws. I felt it, sharp and icy, sink into my skin, through the muscle,
into the bone. It wasn't just cold. It was draining. It pulled at me. I could feel something leaving me. My warmth, my energy, my very essence. It was being sucked dry, consumed by that terrible, frigid touch. My blood ran cold, shriveling in my veins. My vision blurred. I swayed, feeling lightheaded, weak. My body felt hollow, like I was a dried husk being picked clean. I gasped, a hoarse, raw sound. I tried to scream. I opened my mouth, forced the air from my lungs, but nothing came out, no sound. My throat constricted, like there was a hand clamped around it, silencing me. All I heard was something else, a whisper, in my head. It was my voice again, twisted, but unmistakably mine, weak, fading. Don't try. My eyes, wide with unspeakable horror, met Elias's. He saw it. He heard it. He knew. His gaze sparkled with ancient knowing, reflecting my unraveling. I clamped my mouth shut, biting down so hard my teeth grated. I tasted blood, iron, salty. I could feel the small puncture marks inside my lip. Anything to feel real. Anything to break this spell. This wasn't just a house. It was alive, and it was playing with me. I struggled to my feet, pushing past Elias, ignoring the draining cold that still clung to me. He didn't move, just watched. That wide, terrible smile still plastered on his face. I ran, blindly, anywhere, away from him, away from the dust, away from the silence that held my screams. The halls stretched. They were different. I swore the grandfather clock I had passed a moment ago was now further down the hall, impossibly distant. The walls seemed to breathe, contracting and expanding, the wallpaper almost rippling. Pictures on the walls shifted, subtly. A portrait of a dour-faced man looked slightly to the left, then back to the right, in the blink of an eye. My eyes burned. I was seeing things. Or maybe the house was just showing me what it really was. Shadows of other women flickered at the edges of my vision, ghostly figures, always behind me, always watching. Not whole, substantial figures, but blurs, motes of fading light and sorrow. One, just one, she stood in the kitchen doorway, tall, with my hair, my face, except her eyes were dark, unseeing, empty. Her mouth was slack, a silent scream of agony on her lips. She held a cast-iron pan in her right hand, and she moved, slowly, like a puppet on strings. She lifted the pan, shook it. The metal clanged softly, once, then again, and again, over and over. A hollow, rhythmic clang that seemed to echo from an infinite past. My kitchen, my face, that clang, my future. I stopped running. My legs gave out. I sank to the floor, my hands covering my ears. I couldn't escape. Not like this. Not if the house itself was my jailer. Not if Elias was this. What was the use? All the struggle, all the frantic running around. It was just burning through what little I had left, fueling something. Elias walked slowly towards me. He kneeled again. His eyes were wide, full of something. He reached out, lifted my chin. His touch was cold, always cold. "My love," he whispered, and his voice, too, had changed. It was a chorus, faint, subtle, but I heard them, faint echoes, other women's voices, soft, sweet, whispering the same words through him. My love, my precious, precious love. It was 1,000 voices, all saying the same thing.